There it is, cresting the horizon of the hill before you. You see a horde of goblins. 60 goblins coming crashing down into your party of only 5 players. Welcome, scholars, storytellers, and fellow babysitter DMs. This is the Level Up Corner, led by yours truly, Wizo, as we delve into all the tips and tricks about Dungeons & Dragons. Today's topic is Horde Combat, or how to make Horde Combat work. You've seen movies, you also have wanted to make your players or characters feel like they're just awesome individuals, that they have risen from the ranks of being level 1 turds to being able to take on swaths of previous enemies. Take, for example, goblins, as we had in our intro. At level 1, 4 goblins might be a fierce challenge for your party, but at level 12, 4 goblins are not even anything to sneeze at. You just laugh at them and walk past as they try to feebly hit you with their noodle arms and doesn't really do anything. So in order to make these earlier monsters still be applicable to your game and still be fun and usable while giving your players a sense of accomplishment and achievement of what they've gone through, you, my friend, can use hordes. And this is actually a very fun prospect because, again, you see these extremely powerful characters in movies just cut down a bunch of enemies, and it's always fun to have that happen in D&D. Most of the time, we have it to where we go and have an encounter where we fight this one monster, or we fight 4 or 5, but we don't fight a lot. And that's because horde encounters are difficult to run, at least without these tips and tricks. We find it very problematic to run 8, 9, or even 10 monsters, to be fair, as you have to keep track of spells, initiatives, different health, everything. It's just, it's awful. So, how can you run 60 creatures and not have it become an issue? Well, there are a few different ways to do it. The first way that the internet has come up with is through making minions, or using the 4th edition minion rule. All that is instead of giving creatures their own normal HP, let's say 15 HP per goblin, or 20 HP for this monster, etc., they just have 1 HP, but have high saves and AC. This way, they won't just all be popped instantly because it's hard to hit them. And if you do hit them, then it makes a satisfying crunch sound, or swing as you slash through them, since 1 HP is not going to withstand much. It also makes AoE spells do a lot more. Fireballs, if they hit this giant group of creatures, will kill them. It doesn't matter if they save half of 30, they have 1 HP. And it just blows them up, and it makes you all feel extremely powerful. But, again, you have to manage these minions. You have to manage each individual monster. You have to roll each time, and that's not ideal. So the minion idea that the internet has come up with is not the best. An idea that I had earlier on, and was hoping that they would expand upon more with in 5th edition, was swarm monsters. There are swarms of bats, there are swarms of centipedes, there are swarms of all these weird creatures. And there are actually swarm rules. In general, a swarm is a high HP blob that strikes at your enemies, has like 1 attack, but that attack has reduced damage if you have reduced the HP of the swarm. Therefore, trying to represent that the swarm has been cut and half of it's gone, so therefore half of its strength is gone. And it's actually a pretty decent mechanic. In fact, one thing that I have found to do in order to make it work out well is you combine 4 creatures into 1, and that creature merely quadruples the hit points. They quadruple the dice for damage, so if it's 1d8 plus 3, it's 4d8 plus 3. And when it is half health, it reduces the damage by half. That's how you create monsters into swarms. This way, if you have 20 goblins, you have 5 swarms of goblins. And it actually works out fairly well for a lot of your games. There are some problems with it, though. You see, with swarms, if you create or if you make your monsters into a swarm, they go up in a size category. So a small little medium creature becomes a chunky large. A chunky large becomes chunky huge, and it keeps going up. But the problem is that they only take up one little block. And it's kind of like a tabletop war game is the idea, where you have formations and you go out and you fight armies on armies, but you're having like an army fight one person, and if you had 4 goblins, doesn't it make more sense to, instead of just clash them like head on, to instead surround them? Be on all 4 different sides, make it so they can't move out of there. If you have 8 of them, you can make it so that they're completely walled in, and that makes a lot more sense. So swarms, it's a way to solve the problem, but you don't have that thematic swarming on the board that you want to see. It doesn't give you the horde feel. It just makes them into bigger monsters. Yet again. And it can be fine. It can be a way to do it. However, with these problems, swarms just didn't sit right with me. I don't think they're quite what we're looking for as well. So we want to fill the board with a bunch of monsters. And we want to make it so that they'll be able to attack the enemy, and that your players can get that huge feel of when they deal 10 damage, they crunch a goblin or something else along those lines, where their power has really risen up, and you can see the board is filled with enemies. There are a few things that I would highly recommend you do. First, if there ever is a choke point, consolidate monsters into swarms. This is when swarms are their most useful. You're not going to have one person going through a choke point at a time. Make it so that there are 4 enemies in that one block, and it makes it so that this idea of a swarm is still there and still alive. But beyond that, what you need to do is forget rolling. Now you might think, Wizo, how do I forget rolling? Isn't this a little bit much? Well, here's the thing. If you have a giant swarm of enemies, let's say 60 goblins coming at your players, do you want to roll 60 times? I mean, are you insane? No, you don't want to roll 60 times, my friend. Not at all. What you want to do instead is you want to figure out the averages. How many creatures do you need to hit a person? You could go with easy, medium, hard, difficult, hard, or impossible. Easy is generally if you need a 10 or higher to succeed. Medium is a 15 or higher, and we'll put a little chart here for you to see the different variants of it. If your monsters fall into either category, like you're trying to hit a wizard or dodge a Ranger's Entangle, which should be easy, then it might be an easy check. So therefore, you would succeed once for every 2 monsters. For a medium, you would succeed once for every 4 monsters, etc. So breaking it down very simply for you, if a tank is in the middle of a huge fight, surrounded by enemies side to side, and they have a 25 AC, and your monsters have a +4 or 5 or 3 or 2 or 1, where they need a crit to hit. 1 will critically hit for every 20. So, you would need all 60 goblins to go and hit this person in order to make sure that they're hit 3 times. Now, if it's not impossible, I would say avoid criticals just to make it simpler for you, but you get the idea. You're able to adjust based upon the difficulty that it takes you to roll on a d20 to succeed at any given task. This applies to saving throws, attacks, just about anything. And this is a quick way to get through the round without you having to roll everything. I mean, imagine if they cast a fireball and they hit 20 goblins. You're not going to roll 20 saves? If it's a medium difficulty, you're just going to say, yeah, okay, 1 in 4 succeed. If there's 20 of them, there are 5 that succeed. The other 15 fail. And it's just simpler. It's simpler that way. You're easily able to calculate the damage and just move it on. Another thing to do with hordes is you can roll over the damage to make your players feel more powerful. This is optional, but I highly suggest it. That way, if a warrior takes his greatsword and cleaves, critting for 23 damage, he didn't deal, 1 death to a 10 HP goblin. Come on. He swung it and swung to where he killed 3 goblins. Really cool. Or if the rogue sneak attacks for 30 damage, instead of just sneak attacking one in the back, you could have something ridiculous. Make it funny. Make it to where another goblin tries to stop it, gets stabbed a little bit into the side as it skewers part of his artery. Another one comes around, tries to block it, and you go through the neck of that one and then go through to the neck of the other or something, where you just double kill. Make it fun. Make horde encounters something that your players actually enjoy, rather than a, oh my god, one moment, I know it's only been 10 minutes, but I'm almost done with my turn type of endeavor. It's horrible. You don't want hordes to feel like a slog. That is the main thing that we are trying to get away from. Now, in order to make hordes feel less like a slog, you can also have them run smoothly. How you would make your horde encounters run much more smoothly are by, 1, making them simple monsters. You're not going to have monsters that have bonus actions or anything else, or multiple different attacks, 1 to maybe 2, a melee and a range, but simple. Simple. Keep it simple, stupid. Because we want to treat ourselves as being stupid in those instances, because when you're rolling for 60 creatures, you kind of become stupid. Number 2, no spellcasters, unless it's just, I rolled a hit. Because you don't want to keep track of spell slots with a horde. This should seem obvious. It is not. Many people have done this, myself included. But don't have spellcasters in a horde, unless they're just, there to shoot firebolts or something. 3rd, roll on the player's turn. Now, we've already established that, we're not really rolling here, we're just taking averages. So what do I mean by roll on the player's turn? What I mean is that you should pre-calculate when other players are doing things. For example, Timmy, your paladin who has 20 AC, is coming up to take the brunt of many of those attacks. Well, if Timmy up there is going to take the brunt of the attacks and he's in a choke point, or he's the only one who's able to be hit and there's 20 goblins trying to hit him, you can decide what dice roll needs to hit. For example, if you have a +4 to hit, that means you need a 16 on a die roll. You can assign it to the previous templates because you have those cards beforehand, and you can do this all on the player's turn. You don't have to start doing it on your turn. I know! You can actually be preemptive. You can take the initiative, and then when it gets to your turn, you can just say, 2 hit, take this damage, and we're good. You can also be preemptive by figuring out the average damage. Now, on every monster stat block, there is a damage die, and there's also a parentheses of what the usual damage is. So you don't have to roll their damage. I would highly recommend with hordes to never roll damage, because, again, we are trying to get away from rolling, which takes forever. For other monsters, it's fine. You can roll, you can pre-roll on players' turns and everything else, but for hordes, we're trying to get rid of that. And 4th is to pre-plan. Now, by pre-planning, I mean essentially what we did for preparing on the player's turn, but in our session prep. So we're not panicked in the game. We know that Timmy over there has a 20 AC. He's never figured out that Shield of Faith exists, and his party doesn't read spellbooks, so he's never going to increase his AC that way. So he's just going to have a 20 AC. All right, he has a 20 AC, and you're able to pre-plan this in your session prep. Those are some ways to make combat run more smoothly, but there are some things you do need to take into account with hordes. The first is advantage or disadvantage. Advantage or disadvantage is very simple. You either make something twice as likely to hit or twice as likely to miss. So if something is impossible, taking 20 creatures to do attack to get a success, then if they all have advantage, that means it will take 10 creatures to have a success. If they all have disadvantage, then it will take 40 creatures to have a success. As you can see, it's fairly simple with advantage and disadvantage. And lastly, something that you need to consider, and this is for personal preference, is if you are going to stick strictly to the grid system in combat. Now, strictly, I mean one creature can only be surrounded by 8 others. There's no other way around it. Now, while 8 attacks are a lot, it's not 20. You need to decide beforehand and tell your players, because these are horde monsters, that more than one monster is able to be in each square. You can say that this goblin represents 3 monsters in that square, or up to 4 is what I generally state. That way, if you have 8 times 4, you have a lot. So you have 32 monsters, but you have a lot that you can work with to try to surround your players and to try to damage them. And do not forget to spread the damage out as much as possible. The true terror with hordes is not that they will all gang up on the tank and try to beat them. The true horror is that you do not have the capability of just putting one tank in front of the enemy with attacks of opportunity, stopping that enemy from moving. That's what we usually have in D&D. You always try to get that tank in front to hit, and then it becomes, a boring fight. Hordes, they spread over everything. They overrun you, and they make it so that that tank can no longer keep them in check with their, I have my one attack of opportunity. Haha, you don't want to make me have more action economy than you, do you? They say, we don't care. You can kill one of us, but there's 59 more. And then you surround your players. You make it so that you try to split up the damage as much as possible. And that, my friends, is how you make horde encounters terrifying. Now, this is a lot to go over. It was a big video, but I hope you enjoyed the exploration into horde encounters, into how to make your D&D game be a lot more fun. But don't let me be the only one who tells you how to run horde encounters or have a bunch of tips and tricks that I've picked up over the years. This is a community, and I would love to hear from you, my friends, what you have found out in the past years, how you have ran hordes, how you have made them fun, smooth, horrifying, whatever else. Leave a comment down in the comment section down below. And don't forget to like this video so you can see more. Ding the bell so you can actually see more, because YouTube's YouTube. And share it with your friends so that we can really get a discussion going. Lastly, always remember that your players love and appreciate you. Until next time, my friends, this has been Wizo, and keep rolling. Keep rolling.